Excited about what's going on here at the Freedom Institute, and it does grow out of our commitment to education in the state of Florida. We're proud to be a state that's embraced education choice for parents. We think every parent should have meaningful options for their child's education. Not every school is going to work for every kid. There's going to be different things that are different considerations. And so to say, like, yeah, if you're wealthy, you probably could have done that anyways. But you talk about working class, a lot of single moms having to be the primary breadwinner. A lot of them have not had meaningful opportunities in many places around this country. In Florida, we said that this is something that's very important. So we have not just done these private scholarships, we have a robust charter school movement. And of course, I know people here know with homeschooling. So we have close to 400,000 students on private scholarships now throughout the state of Florida as a result of HB1. When I became governor, about 100,000 through our tax credit scholarship program, but it was effectively capped there. So we've quadrupled the number in 5 years. We also have almost 400,000 students in charter schools, which are public schools, but they're not controlled by the school district or maybe more importantly, influenced by the school unions. And so they have done very well where the parent, they have no right to, I mean, it's similar to private, but these charter schools are public schools, but they have no default students going to those schools. The only way they get anyone to go is that a parent says, you know what, I want to go to this school. So you've seen that. What have the results been? Well, just our charter population, 400,000 students. Well, this was when we probably had about 350 with these numbers. But if you look at the performance of just our charter population, which is disproportionately low income, disproportionately racial and ethnic minorities, if you just look at that, and that was their own state, those 350,000, which is where we have the data most recently, it would be one of the top 5 performing states in the country. Just the charter population would do that. Look at Florida overall, what we've done. The most recent Nation's Report Card in 2022, this is the first post-COVID test. We finished 3rd and 4th, respectively, in 4th grade reading and 4th grade math in the entire United States. That was not true in Florida 25 or 30 years ago. But we've also done, and we've understand, having robust choice. And oh yeah, we have close to 200,000 homeschool families now in the state of Florida. So we have really leaned in. We want to give parents meaningful options. But we've also understood that even with all that choice, still the majority of students in the state attend their local school in the school district. So we've worked hard to be able to support additional programs there. We've done billions of dollars in increases for teacher salaries. We're going to do another big push, I think, in this budget that's going to come out in the next week or so. So those are all very, very meaningful things, and the results speak for themselves. We're doing well on these metrics. Many other states have done much worse. And yes, part of it is when COVID hit, we made the decision, we got to get these kids in school. You got to be able to go to school. You can't let fear take away opportunities for millions of kids like they did in California and in Illinois. I think what they is going to have reverberations for many, many generations to take kids out of school like that. So we're proud of that. We're proud of doing the choice. Now, part of that flows from our belief in parents' rights to direct the education and upbringing of their kids. Yes, having the choice about which school, but also having an ability to play a role and to be informed about what's going on in your kid's school. So we've seen things like curriculum transparency, where parents in Florida have a right to know what's being taught, what materials are being used in their kids' school. Why would you oppose that? There's no reason to oppose that. And parents have utilized those resources and those reforms to blow the whistle on some things that were wholly inappropriate to be in schools. There have been pornographic books. There have been things with clearly a very bad agenda that's been trying to shove down the throats of these kids. So parents have been able to blow the whistle on that, and nobody defends any of that stuff. In fact, we just did an event the other day. We played a 2-minute video, and we showed all this stuff Very few people even report on it because, well, some of it I don't think you could put on broadcast TV with different FEC stuff. But I think some of these others, they want to act like the parents are objecting to just normal books, which is not the case. And if they are doing that, there's certainly nothing in Florida law that would say these normal books are problematic. We're talking about an agenda. We're talking about things that are totally inappropriate. But that just gives parents an ability to participate and to know. So that's really important with the rights of parents. The other thing is, and I know this Freedom Institute is on the same page as us, you're going to have students leave our schools, whether it's a charter school, a private school, a public school district, or whether it's homeschooling, and they're going to have a variety of different pathways that they're going to pursue in life. I was just down, we were just upstairs meeting with some of the students. Some of them are doing aviation, some are doing other things. There's a lot of interest in doing a variety of things, and that's great and that's normal. And if you're going down certain fields, yeah, there may be some subjects that you're probably not going to use as much. You go down others, maybe you'll use them. But I think that no matter no matter what pathway you choose, every single person that we graduate out of our schools, they are going to be adult American citizens. And with that comes responsibilities. And part of the responsibility is having a foundation in American civics and in the founding principles of this country. And that's really been a lost art for many, many years. You go to a lot of universities, it's hard to even find courses about the foundations of the country and a lot of these ideals. And when they teach it, a lot of it's very negative, attacking the founding fathers and demonizing them. So we've made a big effort in Florida to say American civics is important. It's something that has universal application, and we don't want to be graduating people that have no foundations and that are just kind of twisting in the wind and don't know how to make sense of the world around them. So we've done things in Florida like, and yes, requiring more civics, doing all that. We've done that, and that's important, but that's totally insufficient. What we've also done is recognize that you could be a very diligent student through college, want to be a teacher. You probably haven't had the courses that you would really need to teach civics in a really strong way, given the nature of higher education in this country. That's just likely the case through no fault of your own. So we've created a curriculum for teachers, a civics curriculum, 50 hours. We've got scholars from places like Hillsdale College, people from like the Heritage Foundation to lecture about some of the really important things that led to the formation of this country. So the teachers go through that, and if they do, and it's voluntary, but if they do, they get a $3,000 bonus for doing it. So we've had thousands of teachers that have gone through and done that just since we've enacted the program a couple years ago. So that is something that I think is really, really meaningful, our commitment to civic. And then we launched the Speech and Debate Initiative. We had 10 school districts or 12 school districts when I became governor that did speech and debate. Now every single school district in the state of Florida is involved in speech and debate. So it gives students an opportunity to not just kind of wrestle with issues, but maybe be tasked with defending a position that's opposite of what you actually think. So you got to get outside of your comfort zone, maybe think about how someone else would approach an issue, try to figure out where they're coming from on that, and then make the case in a direction that you on your own may not necessarily agree with. I think those are valuable skills. What I see in a lot of these universities is a lot of groupthink. They just repeat the same canards basically, and there's not a lot of critical thinking because these assumptions are never challenged. So we're proud of what we've done in civics. The other thing that we've done, and I think it's important, is just to recognize, yes, Tom mentioned, I went, out of state, for higher ed, and I'm a believer in higher ed, but I also understand that a degree from a 4-year brick and ivy university is not the only way you can be successful. And it's not the best way you can be successful for many people. So we've placed an effort, an emphasis on workforce education. You, throughout the state of Florida, are now able to graduate high school with certifications in a lot of these trades, welding, aviation mechanics, you name it, electrical. This provides graduates an ability to be gainfully employed right away without having to go in debt, without having to go through getting a degree. And look, there's pathways where you need to do higher ed. And I'm not suggesting people shouldn't pursue it if that's where their dreams take them. But I think my generation on was told you will not be successful unless you get a degree from a four-year university. That was not true. And so you had a lot of students go, they went deep in debt. They were there just because they were told they had to get a degree. Maybe the degree's in something like zombie studies, and they get out and they're in debt. And then what happens? Well, they don't really necessarily have a lot of great opportunities. And so we just want to let people know that there's a variety of ways where you can do well. And I can tell you, people going into welding, people going to electrical, we have the truck driving program. We were doing 600 truck drivers a year, getting them commercial driver's license through training at our state colleges when I became governor. Now we're at 3,500 a year for commercial driver's license. I mean, these truck drivers are making $100,000 plus a year, Walmart and these other places. It's important. It's important for the economy. It gives them opportunities. Honestly, it's not an easy job. They should be getting paid that. So these are there. So there was, I think, a view that you're somehow less than somebody that went to a four-year college, and that is just totally not true. I mean, who made the better decision? Someone that went and got a certification in welding and was started to make 80, 90 grand a year right out of high school, or someone that went to school for 6 years, went on $100,000 in debt to get a degree in gender studies? Now, I don't know. Maybe you think the other one's better, but I mean, you can't be sitting there where you're looking down on somebody for making a choice to pursue career education. So we're committed to that. We think it's really, really important. We've had great success. We're going to do more. When I became governor, we were in the bottom half of states for workforce education. Our goal was to be number one by the end of the decade. We're well on our way to doing that. So that's really, really exciting. The other thing is you are going to have some students that are not going to pursue workforce, and that's fine because there is opportunities in higher education, but it's important that this higher education is actually meaningful. And so we've really worked hard in the state of Florida to do that, first by not raising tuition. So our tuition has been the same for about 10 years in the state of Florida. It's the cheapest in-state tuition anywhere in the country. And so that gives people an ability to go without going really, really deep in debt. And if you're a top performing student with the Bright Future Scholarship, you end up going for free, certainly if you get the full scholarship, but even if you get the partial, you get 75%. So that's good. I don't want you to have to go into debt, and I think because of the tuition, holding the line on tuition in Florida, you're in a situation where you really don't have to take out a loan. I think students in college, I mean, like I worked all kinds of odd jobs when I was in school. We've made it so that if you don't want to take out a loan and your parents have no money to give you, if you're high performing, so you can get a scholarship for tuition, then you work and can take care of your expenses. And so you theoretically graduate with no debt if that's how you wanted to do it. Well, that's so much better than what we've seen where people are going 80, 90, 100, $120,000 into debt. So affordability is important with higher ed, and the inflation with higher ed. I mean, I know we've had a period of inflation now in this country for the last few years, but higher ed has been inflating for decades. And what do they do with the money? Part of it is they get all these loan dollars from the federal government. Are they improving the quality of the education? Largely, no. What are they doing? They're expanding the administrative bureaucracies of the universities. So you have more administrative bloat, but you're not necessarily getting a better product. So that's not what we want in the state of Florida. The other thing is the purpose of higher education is not to impose an ideological agenda on the students. The purpose of higher education should be its classical mission, pursuing truth, upholding academic integrity and rigor, and preparing students to be citizens of the Republic. So in Florida, we've said that these taxpayer-funded state universities, they don't have a license to just do whatever the heck they want to do. They need to be pursuing the traditional mission of a university, and they need to be pursuing that in a way that's consistent with the best interests of the state of Florida and the desires of the people of the state of Florida. And so we've done things like eliminate DEI from our public universities. We were the first state in America to do that. this DEI is really insidious. First, it's very divisive because it tries to divvy people up based on superficial characteristics, but it also serves to supplant merit in favor of this agenda. And that is just devastating. And so we're not doing that in Florida. We were happy to do it. Texas followed us. I think Iowa's followed us. Maybe a couple others have followed us. But the mission of the university cannot be this ideological mission. So what we've been able to do, and so for example, there's core courses that are required through our state university system. So our Board of Governors made the decision sociology had been required and American history had not been. So they said, how does that make any sense? So they said sociology is no longer required, but American history is required. To me, that's common sense. Now, you had a lot of carping when that happened, and I'm thinking to myself, why? You can still take sociology as an elective, and I think it's because they know a lot of people won't take it unless it's mandated, whereas we're now doing and channeling students into something that I think is important for understanding your country, is just important for being able to exercise the responsibilities of citizenship. So education, not indoctrination, is the mantra for the universities as well as the K-12, but particularly in the universities. And there's been a problem with this for a long time, but I think post October 7th, when Hamas attacked Israel, you started to see all this stuff come to the forefront in these universities, particularly in Ivy League universities. And it was just a lot of intellectual and moral rot that was on display. I think a lot of people who study this knew that that was kind of what was going on, but there's a lot of people that don't follow this that had no idea. And so you see these students protesting immediately after the attack, cheering on Hamas terrorists. There's something wrong if that's what's going on. If that's the ethos of your university, and you look at some of the mealy-mouthed statements that those university presidents put out, places like Penn and Harvard, and then compare Florida, like University of Florida, much different approach in terms of being able to distinguish between right and wrong. So we got a lot more to do with higher ed. I think we're now Wall Street. I mean, look, these rankings are what they are. But Wall Street Journal's most recent higher ed rankings, University of Florida ranked 15th in America, including privates, and it was actually ranked the highest public university in America. U.S. News and World Report, Florida is now 5th behind UCLA, Berkeley, Virginia, and Michigan. And we were 20th a decade ago, 15 years ago. Florida State is now in the top 20. USF has gone up. FIU has gone up. So you're seeing a lot of positive movement on that. But I think the more that we're focused on actual core academic mission, rather than going on some ideological joyride, we're going to be so much better off. So I appreciate what you guys are doing here. I think that if you look, I mean, education is important for preparing people to be able to make their way in the world, make a living, hopefully do very well financially, and that's all very, very important. But there's also a basic necessity that we're a Republican system of government. And Benjamin Franklin, when he walked out of the Constitutional Convention after they signed the Constitution of the United States, he was asked, did you give us a republic or a monarchy? And he said, a republic if you can keep it. Because they understand, you can have the best declaration in the world, you can have the best constitution in the world. These things don't run on autopilot. They require every generation of Americans to be able to stand up and defend freedom. Sometimes that may mean putting on a uniform, risking your life, and giving your life for this country. But on a basic level, I think it means that the people, the young people, are educating to be good citizens of this republic and good stewards of the country's future. So the mission here, I think, is much bigger than just helping students who may want to be a pilot at Naples Airport. All that, it's all very important. But I think the larger thing is we have to have our education system producing really strong patriotic citizens. And you guys are making a stab at that. I think it's going to be very successful over the long term, and you can count on our support in the state of Florida to stand by you every step of the way. Thanks, everybody. God bless.
you have just gone through and enumerated, particularly these pathways. You talked about the various pathways to success. Your freedom agenda has as its cornerstones, as I understand it, both education and economic freedom. And we think those are interrelated, of course, and we think through learning at the Freedom Institute that our students will enjoy economic freedom because we hope to give them teach them self-sufficiency through learning, and that they will, as you've just said, is your goal, they will graduate as citizens of this country, ready to vote, as 18-year-olds, ready to go on to higher education if that's their choice, ready to go on to career education if that's your choice. But you have been on this so intently since you were first elected governor in 2018. Where did that passion come from? How did you develop this extraordinary interest in making lives better for families and for kids in Florida?
Well, I mean, I think that so when I was in school, we had 9/11. I think after I graduated college, but so I made the decision to volunteer and serve in the military, knowing that you may end up going overseas, and so I ended up doing that, volunteer to serve in Iraq, and it was kind of a decision that a lot of people found really perplexing because they're like, well, wait a minute, you've got degrees from Harvard and Yale, you can do all kinds of things and make millions of dollars, and yet you're volunteering to go to Fallujah and sit, be in the sandbox. But I think it grew out of an appreciation for being born and raised in this country, because it gave me an opportunity to really make the best of my God-given talents. And I felt that when the country was in conflict, that I needed to raise my hand and do that. And so that's just kind of how I viewed things, and I have an appreciation for that. But I also see where we're falling short. And I think on this education, the country's fallen short in a lot of ways. We're obviously doing our best in Florida to do well on it. On the economic freedom, I think it's interesting because our economy in Florida was rated #1 of all 50 states by CNBC, and usually they are not a fan of me. Trust me. And so, I think the reason is, well, part of it is our approach has been to understand you got to protect taxpayers, you got to have a light footprint. In Florida, we have the lowest number of state employees per capita in the entire country. Our cost per government entity is the lowest per capita in the entire country. And our budget, even though we now in Florida have millions of more people than New York State, our budget is half the size of New York State's. I'm going to make sure whatever budget they give me, it will end up being half when all is said and done. And I think the leaders of the legislature are on the same page as me as this. I mean, we want to see that top line a budget really be responsible. So I think you're going to see that. But yet, and I don't know if we have any people here who've moved from New York, do we? Oh, we do. Yeah, you're normally on this coast. It's everyone coming from Illinois and Michigan and all those places. But New Yorkers will tell me, oh my gosh, your roads are so much better, your services are better, your schools are better. And I'm thinking to myself, we're doing that with half the budget. So it just shows you so much of government is not necessary. These become constituencies. It's a way for certain people to exercise power. So we've done a really good job, I think, of having government confined to its proper role. On the other hand, economic freedom can be impinged when government and bureaucracy and all that do too much, but it can also be undermined by corporatism. A free economy is not just doing whatever the 10 largest corporations want. It's making so that people can compete in a competitive marketplace. And we've done a very good job in Florida of walking a line on the side of freedom, true economic freedom, rather than devolving into corporatism. And we've seen that in a number of instances. I mean, I was most recently, we did the 1-year anniversary of us signing the bill to remove the corporate cronyism from Disney that they had accumulated over many years, to say, wait a minute, why should this one company have all these special rules where they don't have to pay the same taxes or follow the same laws as everybody else in Florida? It doesn't make any sense. And so we were able to do Control Board took over that district, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, they're going to have people going to pay more below them." That was all BS. They've cut property taxes by $12 million just in that district. So those are a lot of businesses who are not Disney, but they're important for Florida. And then they've opened up procurement to competitive bidding. So you now have businesses in Central Florida that for the first time can compete for jobs there. And that saved $4 million by having competitive bidding because the district's paying less. So that's an example, I think, of good government. But nationally, if you look, things like ESG, where you have these big asset managers pursuing an agenda, that is corporatism. That is not free market economics. In fact, they're even saying that their obligation to their shareholders is effectively secondary to their desire to pursue a political agenda. Now, they'll try to wrap it all and say, oh, no, we have to do this. We fought back against that very successfully in Florida. We banned it from our pension system. We said that the rating agencies aren't allowed to use ESG when they rate state and municipal bonds, because what they were doing is they had an ESG score, they had a normal credit score, and they had not combined them, but the push was to combine them. So your state or municipal bonds would be rated based on whether you are taking policies that they think are important, climate change, all this other stuff. And like that is totally not going to work, but that's what they want to do. So we fought back against that. But, there are some people who think that basically anytime a corporation wants to do anything, that it's somehow not free market to push back on them if they're doing things that are destructive. I don't think that we should be governed by 6 asset managers. I don't think we should be governed by 6 anybody. But if we had to choose 6, they would be the last people I would choose because they don't have your interests at heart. And I think that's part of the reason why we've been successful. I mean, we're a better place, a better state for people to start businesses and to have family-owned businesses and medium-sized businesses than just about anywhere in the country. And we're number 1 in new business formations every year since I've been governor.
And thank you for your service, Governor. You did have a lot of other choices, even though you went to those Northeastern schools. We have a number of people here who are just dying to go to our schools and stay in our university and stay in Florida. A lot of times what happens, people go to school out of state and they don't come back.
Well, it's also this is the case. I mean, I think for what you've seen recently, employers and people are going to think, okay, you graduate from Harvard. What has been put into your head while you were there? Like, look, I mean, I think I'm sure everyone there has good aptitude, but it just raises the question about, are these really going to be the leaders of our society the way that it was thought that was the case however many decades ago? And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the prestige factor is much less than it was in the past. And I think you do very well by utilizing the resources that we have here in the state of Florida, for sure. And that probably wasn't true when I was growing up. You had an opportunity, and I was a baseball player at Yale. I'd never been to New England in my life before I showed up on the campus there, and it was a culture shock. It was not necessarily something that was similar to where I grew up, but I had the belief, and I didn't even know colleges were liberal then. I mean, I just went in thinking, well, you know what, this is going to help me kind of expand opportunities. And that was probably true at the time. I just wonder now how true that is. I think there's a lot of people that are really concerned about a lot, and you saw some of these students who were really active at supporting Hamas, that they had job offers pulled from them, which I think was appropriate. I mean, like, look, we at some point, we've got to have a basic common set of values here. And if you're celebrating terrorist attacks like that, that's just not going to fly. So I think those universities have really, really done, and they're so into the DEI and all that. I mean, that is just their bread and butter. So I think I think you got to have a long road there. I think there's a lot of problems in those places, and it's obviously very expensive. So you're mortgaging your future in many respects. But I don't think that it packs the punch that it used to. So follow your dreams, but just understand there's a lot of trouble brewing up there.
You bring up baseball. If I recall correctly, in your book, you talked about when your team from Dunedin went to the Little League World Series. You didn't quite get to the finish line because a team from California beat you. So how does it feel today to be playing against California and getting on stage with the erstwhile governor from California and comparing Florida to California?
We did a little bit better on the debate stage than we did on the Little League baseball field against California. That's for sure. It's some of this stuff is like debating who won. It's like, look, with that debate, it's just the reality is people are fleeing that state, and they had never fled that state for the entire history of California up until he became governor. Why? He had draconian COVID lockdown policies. Now, he would go to the French Laundry and cavort and eat dinner when he was telling everybody else you weren't allowed to do that. He had his kids in private school while he was shutting down the schools for everybody else. You have homeless everywhere. You have open air drug markets. You have larceny has basically been legalized. People go shoplift. That's why all these retail outlets are being closed, because they just get robbed blind, and there's nothing you can do. People can steal $999 and they will not be prosecuted in San Francisco or Los Angeles, some of these places. So it's an example of, and I don't know if any of you have been to California. I went when I was in the Navy to Coronado. I got sent to Coronado, which is Southern California by San Diego. And I remember going to the bachelor officer quarters when I checked in, and I get up to my room, and like a good Floridian, I look for the air conditioning unit. And they're like, there's no air conditioning here. I was like, why? They're like, you don't need it. Just open the window. And I'm like, well, okay. So I opened the window. I'm like, where's the screen on the window? Like, you don't need a screen. There's no bugs here. So it was just fresh air, beautiful weather right on the Pacific Ocean. And there's so many other great things about the state. Naturally, they have more advantages than any other state. And so I was thinking, like, I wouldn't want to, but this is 15, 20 years ago. I was thinking, I wouldn't want to pay taxes here, obviously, but man, this is great. I understand why people would do it. Now, all that, the basic society has collapsed in so many of those places, and it's all because of bad policies. I mean, that's what did it. It's like sometimes things happen that may be beyond your control. This was engineered by leftist policies. And so it is what it is. I mean, when you have hundreds of thousands of people on net leaving your state, and we have hundreds of thousands of people on net coming to our state, that just speaks louder than anything else you could do, because ultimately people vote with their feet. And the number, we used to not get we've always gotten people from the Midwest. We've always gotten people from the Northeast. But the number of people we've gotten from the entire West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, in the last 4 or 5 years, has been more than we really worked hard in the state of Florida to do that. Thousands of miles, because it's one thing to move from New York to like Boca Raton. We just get a flight up there. It's whatever, 2 hours 15, 2 hour 20 minute. But when you go across the whole continent, I mean, you're not just going to be going back and forth. You're really making a big statement about why you're doing that. And they're doing it because of the way those states are governed. And it's been really, really bad. So all this stuff matters. And I think the beautiful thing about the country is we have 50 different states. They're entitled to take different approaches to these issues, and American citizens are entitled to react accordingly.
Anyone here from California? Ooh, one brave soul. Anecdotally, Governor, in Naples, I've been here 40 years plus, never saw a California license.
Work and can take care of your expenses. And so you theoretically graduate with no debt if that's how you wanted to do it. Well, that's so much better than what we've seen where people are going $80, $90, $100, $120,000 into debt. So affordability is important with higher ed, and the inflation with higher ed. I mean, I know we've had a period of inflation now in this country for the last few years, but higher ed has been inflating for decades. And what do they do with the money? Part of it is they get all these loan dollars from the federal government. Are they improving the quality of the education? Largely, no. What are they doing? They're expanding the administrative bureaucracies of the universities. So you have more administrative bloat, but you're not necessarily getting a better product. So that's not what we want in the state of Florida. The other thing is the purpose of higher education is not to impose an ideological agenda on the students. The purpose of higher education should be its classical mission: pursuing truth, upholding academic integrity and rigor, and preparing students to be citizens of the Republic. So in Florida, we've said that these taxpayer-funded state universities They don't have a license to just do whatever the heck they want to do. They need to be pursuing the traditional mission of a university, and they need to be pursuing that in a way that's consistent with the best interests of the state of Florida and the desires of the people of the state of Florida. And so we've done things like eliminate the DEI from our public universities. We were the first state in America to do that. This DEI is really insidious. First, it's very divisive because it tries to divvy people up based on superficial characteristics, but it also serves to supplant merit in favor of this agenda, and that is just devastating. And so we're not doing that in Florida. We were happy to do it. Texas followed us. I think Iowa's followed us. Maybe a couple others have followed us. But the mission of the university cannot be this ideological mission. So what we've been able to do, and so for example, there's core courses that are required through our state university system. So our Board of Governors made the decision. Sociology had been required and American history had not been. So they said, how does that make any sense? So they said sociology is no longer required, but American history is required. To me, that's common sense. Now, you had a lot of carping when that happened, and I'm thinking to myself, why? You can still take sociology as an elective, and I think it's